I only wanted some fresh air. But the moment I stepped into his garden, shirtless and barefoot, he caught me. What started as a playful scolding turned into him pinning me against the fence. And I didn't want him to stop. If you could feel that heat too, like this video. Subscribe for more stories like this, and tell me, ever been caught doing something you secretly wanted? Yeah, like I said earlier, I only wanted some fresh air. The house felt too full, of heat, of silence, of thoughts I couldn't quite silence. Midnight had settled over the street like a warm blanket, heavy and breathless. I slipped out barefoot, with nothing but a thin cotton tank and shorts clinging to my skin. My hair was a mess. I didn't care. No one was supposed to be awake. The grass was cool beneath my feet as I stepped through the side gate and into the garden that had always tempted me. His garden. It was overgrown in places, wild like he was, yet strangely calming. I took a breath. Then I saw him. Leaning against the fence, arms folded, a quiet smirk playing at the corner of his lips. Shirtless. His chest gleamed slightly in the moonlight, like he'd been standing there long enough to glisten. "You always wander like this?" he asked, voice low, rough like gravel smoothed by water. My heart jumped. Not from fear, from something else. Something warm and ridiculous. I tried to play it off. "Could ask you the same," I said, lifting my chin. He didn't move toward me, but his eyes did something my body recognized instantly. They traveled, slow and deliberate, from my bare toes up to the curve of my collarbone. He took me in, and didn't hide it. "I was out for the quiet," I murmured. "Then you picked the wrong garden," he said. "Nothing about this place is quiet when you're in it." I should have left. I didn't. Instead, I stepped closer. Just one barefoot step. We were still apart, but the air between us had shifted. It wasn't just air anymore. It was full of unsaid things, of long glances across driveways, of that one time his hand brushed mine over the shared fence and neither of us moved for a heartbeat too long. "Do you always watch your neighbors like this?" I asked, softer now. His smirk deepened. "Only the ones who walk barefoot into my garden like they belong here." And God help me, I wanted to belong. We didn't touch. Not yet. But when he finally stepped toward me, closed that small charged space, and brushed a loose curl from my cheek with the back of his fingers, I forgot how to breathe. "You should go back inside," he said, but it didn't sound like a warning. "I should," I whispered. But I didn't move. I didn't move. Neither did he. There we stood, two silhouettes in the moonlight, pretending this was nothing, a neighborly encounter, an accidental moment. But it wasn't. We both knew. The night held its breath. "You're freezing," he murmured, fingers ghosting over my shoulder. He didn't need to touch much, just enough for my skin to bloom beneath his hand, my breath to catch. I hadn't realized how cool the night had grown until I felt the warmth of him, so close and effortless. He stepped around me, slowly, like I was something delicate, like he didn't want to spook me. I could feel his presence at my back, not touching, but impossibly near. "Come on," he said, voice a low thread of gravel and velvet. "Let me at least get you something warm." It wasn't a question. I turned, meeting his eyes, dark, unreadable, patient. Still no pressure, still no assumption. But the invitation stretched between us like a ribbon I wanted to tug loose. His kitchen was dim, golden under soft lights, smelling faintly of cinnamon and something deeper, something masculine and grounded. He handed me a hoodie. I slipped it on. It smelled like him. Like trouble. I watched him move, effortless, barefoot too, every step unhurried. He poured hot tea without asking what I wanted. Somehow, he knew. And when he passed the mug into my hands, our fingers brushed again. A second too long. A second too much. "You always wear hoodies this big?" I asked, partly to fill the air, partly to breathe again. He smirked. "Only for women who sneak into my garden half-dressed." I felt the heat rise to my cheeks, but I didn't shrink. I leaned into it. Into him. I wasn't sneaking. he said, sipping his tea. You just happened to wander in barefoot, at midnight, into my side of the fence? I wanted fresh air. He looked over the rim of his cup, eyes dark and amused. That why your pulse is still racing? My fingers tightened on the mug. He wasn't wrong. The silence between us thickened again, not awkward, charged, alive. Like every molecule in the room knew something was happening and didn't dare interrupt it. He set his cup down. I did the same. And for a moment, we just stood there, neither moving, neither pulling away. It was quiet, still, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with skin and everything to do with the fact that I felt seen. Really seen. And maybe even wanted. He was the first to step back, not far, just enough to remind me that this wasn't a dream. That he was real. That this was happening. I'm not going to kiss you, he said, voice low. My heart flipped. Why not? Because, he said, taking one step back toward me, if I kiss you, I won't want to stop. I held his gaze. Then don't start with a kiss. His breath caught. And in the quiet that followed, nothing happened, and everything changed. The air between us cracked, soft, but sharp, like the faintest electricity before a summer storm. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. I could feel it all, the weight of his restraint, the hunger laced in his stillness, the way his eyes dipped to my mouth and then back up, fast and full of conflict. Why are you looking at me like that? I asked. Because, he said slowly, you walked into my garden like a dream I've been trying not to have. That silenced me. He meant it. Every word hung in the room like confession. We weren't strangers. Not really. We'd shared nods over fences, the occasional need help with that, when groceries threatened to spill. But it was always polite. Careful. The dance of two adults pretending to be nothing more than neighbors while something ancient tugged at the spaces between. Until tonight. I looked down at my bare legs, the oversized hoodie barely grazing mid-thigh, his scent wrapped around me like a question I wasn't ready to answer. But he didn't touch me. Not once. Not yet. He stepped back, finally. Gave me space. Just enough to breathe again, or try. I should walk you back, he said, almost reluctantly. You don't have to. I want to, he replied, and this time there was no teasing in his voice. Just warmth. And the echo of something deeper. We walked side by side, quiet. The night had grown heavier, like it knew too much. My heart beat a little too fast for the pace. I could feel the brush of his arm each time we shifted, our fingers not touching but so close it hurt. At the fence line between our gardens, we paused. You're brave, he said suddenly, looking down at me. Coming out like that. I wasn't thinking. No, he said, I think you were. You just didn't expect to be seen. I swallowed. The truth of it hit too hard to deny. I had wanted to be seen. Not for show. Not for validation. But for who I really was underneath the layers, the quiet parts. The parts that wandered barefoot in the dark, hoping someone would notice. I see you, he added, softer now. And then he did touch me. Not lips. Not skin. Just his hand, gently resting over mine, fingers curling around with quiet intent. The kind of touch that asked nothing, promised nothing, and yet gave everything. He didn't move closer. He didn't have to. That hand stayed with me long after he'd gone back to his side of the fence. Sleep didn't find me that night. Not with the feel of his hand still folded over mine, not with the warmth of his hoodie still clinging to my skin. I curled into it like a memory I didn't want to end, inhaling him, the way his voice lingered in my mind like smoke. I should have returned the hoodie the next morning. But I didn't. I wore it again the next night. And the night after. By the third, I found myself standing at the fence. Not by accident. Not this time. I didn't knock. I didn't call out. I simply waited. He didn't keep me waiting long. The back door creaked softly, then his footsteps, barefoot like before, steady, quiet, familiar. You came back, he said, his voice lower than I remembered. I nodded. You still wearing that? I haven't taken it off. He smiled, but not with amusement. With something else. Something softer. Tender, even. Come here, he said, not commanding, not demanding. Just asking. I did. This time, I didn't need an excuse. No tea. No nerves. No fumbling small talk. Just the two of us, standing under the stars, closer than comfortable, too far gone for pretending. He looked down at me, eyes searching. His fingers brushed the edge of the sleeve I was nervously twisting. Then, slowly, he slid his hand up my arm, across my shoulder, to the nape of my neck. My breath caught. But he didn't pull me in, he waited. I closed the gap. My forehead pressed to his chest, and he exhaled like he'd been holding that breath for years. One arm came around me, firm and warm, the other still resting lightly against the back of my head, fingers tangled in my hair like a promise he hadn't made aloud. I almost kissed you the other night, he said quietly. I know. His lips were at my temple now. Not kissing. Just there. Still. Heavy. Aching. And tonight. I tilted my face up. Almost doesn't hurt as much when you know it's coming. His lips hovered near mine. Not touching, not yet. The space between us narrowed into nothing. We didn't kiss. But the moment passed like one. Slow, drawn out, filled with breath and hunger and a tenderness I didn't know I'd been starving for. Good night, he whispered against my cheek. Good night, I whispered back, every nerve awake, every inch of me buzzing with almost. And as I walked away, slowly, reluctantly, I knew this wouldn't be the last, almost, between us. But it might be the last one we let stay that way. I avoided him the next day. Not on purpose at first, but once the daylight hit and reason came crawling back, I found myself hiding behind curtains and pretending I wasn't listening for his door. I told myself I was being cautious. Mature. But deep down, I was afraid that what we shared had been too much, or not enough. By nightfall, I gave up pretending. I opened the window and stood there in his hoodie, breathing in the dark. The garden was quiet. Still. But my skin tingled, like he was already watching. And then, like the night itself answered, I heard a knock at my back door. Not the front. Never the front. I opened it before I had time to talk myself out of it. He was standing there with 2 mugs in his hands. You missed your tea, he said. I smiled without meaning to. You waited for me? He nodded. I would have waited longer. We didn't sit in the kitchen this time. We stood just outside my door, under the weak glow of the porch light, facing each other with cups warming our palms. No fence between us now. His eyes studied me like I was fragile, but also like he'd memorized me. The shape of my mouth, the weight of my silence, the way I couldn't meet his gaze when I was thinking too much. I keep trying not to want this, he said quietly. My heart stuttered. I knew exactly what he meant. The quiet restraint. The invisible rope we'd both been pulling taut, night after night. But every time I see you, he continued, you undo me. I swallowed. And what if I don't want you to stop wanting? He didn't respond. Not with words. He set the mug down beside us, gently took mine from my hands and did the same. Then, he reached for me. Slowly. Carefully. And when he touched me this time, my waist, my hip, the small of my back, there was no doubt in it. Just heat. Just intent. Just truth. He pulled me close, his forehead resting against mine. His breath was steady, mine wasn't. If I kiss you now, he whispered, I won't stop at almost. I don't want you to, I breathed. There was a beat. And then, finally, he kissed me. It wasn't rough. It wasn't urgent. It was full. Deliberate. A kiss made of unsaid things and quiet nights, and every time I'd stood at the fence pretending I didn't want this. His hands were in my hair. Mine were on his chest. And for the first time in weeks, maybe longer, I wasn't cold anymore. When he pulled back, we were both breathless. Changed. He touched his forehead to mine again and whispered, "Now what?" I didn't know. But I knew I wanted to find out. With him. I woke before the sun. Not because of a noise. Not even because I couldn't sleep. I just wanted to feel it again. That moment. That kiss. That impossible warmth of being wanted, gently and without apology. I stayed in bed for a while, wrapped in his hoodie like a secret only the night knew about, listening to the world wake slowly. Birds. Distant voices. The familiar creak of a gate that was no longer just a neighbor's. It was his. And now, somehow, it felt a little like mine too. I wandered into the kitchen barefoot. No tea. No plans. Just habit. Just hope. And then I heard it, a soft tap at the back door. My heart skipped. I opened it with a breath I hadn't meant to hold. He stood there, hair a little messier than usual, one hand sheepishly buried in the pocket of his joggers, the other holding a brown paper bag. "Didn't think you'd be up," he said. I stepped aside. "I was hoping you'd come." He smiled, small and warm. "I brought croissants." We didn't sit at the table. We ate them standing at the counter like two people who didn't quite know what to do with morning light and the weight of a shared night. "They're still warm," I said, mouth half full. He nodded. "I picked them up 20 minutes ago. Thought maybe we could talk." Talk. That word held more than it should. "About last night." "About anything," he replied. "Everything, if you want." And just like that, the air shifted. Not heavier. Just clearer. We talked. Not about work. Not about weather. Not even about fences. We talked about childhood things. About the way the world sometimes quiets before it breaks. About what it means to feel alone when you live 20 feet from someone who sees everything. He told me he used to stand in his own garden, watching my light go on in the kitchen, wondering what I was thinking. Wishing he was brave enough to knock. I told him I sometimes walked out barefoot on purpose. Just in case he was watching. We laughed. But underneath it, we both knew what it really was. We weren't strangers anymore. We weren't even neighbors. We were two people who had touched something too tender to take lightly. When he reached for my hand, it wasn't to start anything new. It was to say, "I'm here. I'm not running." And when I laced my fingers through his, it was my way of saying, "I know." It was raining by evening. Not hard, just that soft, silvery drizzle that makes everything feel closer. Cleaner. Like the world is rinsing itself off before something new begins. He texted me just after 8 p.m. "Can I show you something?" I stared at the message longer than I needed to. Then I replied, "Yes." Doors open. He didn't use the door. He came through the garden, hoodie pulled low, wet at the shoulders, smelling like rain and something green and earthy. "Still coming in like a thief," I teased as I stepped aside. He looked at me, and something in his eyes made the teasing catch in my throat. He wasn't smiling. "Come with me," he said, holding out his hand. I didn't ask where. I just took it. We walked through the garden in silence, the soft patter of rain against leaves the only sound. Past the fence. Past the side of his house. To a door I'd never noticed before. Old, wood, half hidden by ivy. He pulled a key from his pocket, unlocked it, and stepped inside, tugging me gently in after him. It was a workshop. Or it had been once. Now it was something else entirely. Warm light. Canvas everywhere. Tools. Shelves lined with jars of paintbrushes, bits of driftwood, old books. The walls were hung with frames, some filled, some still waiting. "You're an artist," I whispered, spinning slowly in the center of it all. He nodded. "Why didn't you tell me?" He shrugged, watching me instead of the room. "Wasn't ready." I turned to a canvas near the back, draped in cloth. He followed my gaze. Then, after a moment's pause, he stepped forward and pulled the cover off. It was me. Not a perfect portrait. Not detailed in the traditional sense. But it was me. Barefoot. In his garden. One hand lifted slightly like I was reaching for something I hadn't found yet. I couldn't speak. "I started it before I even knew your name," he said quietly. The silence wrapped around us like a sheet pulled too tight, not uncomfortable, just close. I looked at him, and he looked at me like he'd just handed me the most fragile thing he owned. "You see me like that?" I asked, breathless. He stepped closer. "No. I see you better now." And when he touched my cheek, there was no urgency. Just reverence. Like he was afraid I'd fade if he moved too fast. He didn't kiss me this time. He just held me there, pressed to him, safe in his hands, surrounded by everything he hadn't said but finally shared. And I realized something. Sometimes being seen was more intimate than being touched. That night, when I finally shut my bedroom door, the quiet was deafening. I wanted to call him. To hear his voice one more time before sleep swallowed me whole. But I didn't. Because I wasn't sure if I was ready to let him see all of me yet. The parts one keep hidden even from myself. I sat on the edge of my bed, fingers tracing the collar of his hoodie, the one he'd left behind like a promise. I thought about the canvas. How he saw me. How he saw me. And I wondered if I could ever see myself the same way. I was afraid. Afraid of what it meant to be seen. To be wanted. Afraid that if I let him in too far, I'd lose myself. But when I closed my eyes, all I saw was his face. Not the face that caught me in the garden. Not the face that kissed me softly in the dark. But the one that looked at me like I was more than the sum of my mistakes. I touched my lips, the same lips that had almost met his again and again. And for the first time in a long time, I whispered to the dark, "Maybe I'm ready." The next morning, my phone buzzed. A message from him. Walls are meant to be broken down, but only when you're ready to build something better. I smiled. And this time, I believed it. We met that evening in the garden again. But this time, no fences separated us. No walls between us but the ones we were ready to let fall. He took my hand, his fingers weaving with mine like they were meant to. "I don't want to rush," he said softly. "I just want this, you me right here." I nodded. There was no hurry. No pressure. Just us, breathing the same air, feeling the same pulse. He brushed a loose strand of hair from my face and smiled like he was seeing me anew. Then, he pulled me close, his warmth anchoring me in a way words never could. Our foreheads touched, our breaths mingled, and everything else, noise, fear, past ghosts, faded to silence. It was a kiss that promised everything without needing to say a word. Not rushed. Not frantic. Just deep, steady, and full of meaning. When we finally pulled apart, he whispered, "This is only the beginning." And I believed him. Because in that moment, in his arms, under the sky we both claimed, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Home.